Good evening, everybody. My name is Wayne Ranney, and I serve on the board of directors for the Grand Canyon Historical Society. And we welcome you to tonight's virtual outing. The Grand Canyon Historical Society, our mission is to celebrate and promote the study and preservation of the Grand Canyon region's cultural and natural history for the education and enjoyment of its members and the public. And just last year in 2024, we celebrated 40 years of existence when the society was started by some pioneer members of Grand Canyon Village. We encourage you to become a member. Our dues are only $35 a year. We are an all-volunteer organization, and we're hopeful that many of you can join us so that we can continue to expand all of our activities like these virtual outings and in-person outings and our tri-annual history symposiums. If you do become a member, you'll get 4 issues in the calendar year of the Old Pioneer magazine, which has a lot of history articles about the Grand Canyon and the Grand Canyon region. So we do these virtual outings. We conduct tours at the South and North Rim, and you can find it on our website. Our website is very easy, grandcanyonhistory.org.
Jerry Snow has been a university professor, a water quality supervisor for Monterey County Water Resources Agency in California, and an entomologist for the U.S. Forest Service Rocky Mountain Research Station. Currently, Jerry is a docent at the Museum of Northern Arizona and a tour guide here in the Southwest.
Okay, well, let's get back to mail route through Northern Arizona in 1858-59. Actually, that's a question. A mail route through Northern Arizona in 1858-59? This is wilderness. Crazy. Why would you want a mail route through here? Well, let's see. Let's go to the first thing I have on my list here is to talk about the Mexican War, because we need a little background here. So under President Polk, 1846, Manifest Destiny, but actually the war started because of a dispute between the border of Texas and Mexico. And so let's go to the map, which is my next slide. Yeah, this is a map of North America in 1846. This map was done by a map maker in, I think it was Philadelphia. And we can see in yellow here, let's see, can you see my my arrow on the screen?
Yes, I sure can.
Okay, so Mexico here, and by the way, notice the Yucatan Peninsula is not yellow because it was kind of independent at that time. And then we have Oregon Territory up here, going all the way up to the latitude of 5440. 5440 or fight. I remember that from some history class I took. And that of course, is a little conflict there between the United States and the British. Notice this is all British territory up here, what we call Canada today. And that was settled actually peacefully. And right across here, you just continue this line across and you get into Fort Vancouver Island, Victoria, the capital of British Columbia, and so forth. And then you divide what's below that into Washington and Oregon and Idaho and so forth. So that was Oregon Territory. And all of this was Mexico. And right along the Rio Grande River, right where my pointer is going right now, is what they called New Mexico. All the colonization from Mexico along the Colorado River and the Indian pueblos here were called New Mexico. Everything else up here was Alta California, Upper California, and then the Baja here was the Lower California. So by the time the Mexican War was over, 55% of old Mexico was part of the United States. A little more than half of old Mexico became part of the United States by the Treaty of 1848, Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Oh, we chipped in a little bit, like 13 million maybe, a fraction of a penny on the acre. But so we acquired all this territory. And besides the New Mexico area along the Rio Grande with the towns and the Indian pueblos, the only other place that was occupied was California, starting in the 1770s with the Junipero Serra starting the California missions along the coast and Franciscan missions. And then after 1846, the treaty was signed. And then what happened in 1849? The gold rush. Uh-oh. So people coming from all over the world and from the East Coast and Canada and everywhere else were flocking into the gold fields in California. And to keep things under control, California quickly became a state, 1850, 1 year later, 2 years after the treaty. So we have California, and then we have all the rest of this here. But you know what had happened up here at Salt Lake? The Mormons had moved from over here by the Mississippi River to get away from persecution and so forth, be on their own. And when they got out here, 1846, 47, this was still part of Mexico, not inhabited. But they thought, free at last. Uh-oh, the treaty, and then the United States, all this became part of the United States. But they had already kind of carved out using the watershed of the Colorado River, actually, for all this area to be part of their territory. Of course, that didn't happen. The U.S. Army came out to install a secular government for the Utah territory. And we were expecting to have a war. And so the U.S. wanted to know if they could supply American Army by bringing a steamboat up the Colorado River, which Joseph Christmas Ives accomplished that feat and put the Colorado River, the Grand Canyon on the map, the first map, and so forth. And let's see, that was in 1858, 50, 50, 57, 58, 58, 59. And so all of this now become New Mexico territory after the upper part, Nevada and New Mexico. I mean, Nevada and Utah. And then what today is New Mexico and Arizona. All of this became part of the United States. So we had some civilization over here, and we had some over here, and in between was pretty much wilderness, and Indians occupying, some friendly and some not. So that's what we're faced with by the time we start figuring out what we're going to do to communicate from the East Coast to the West Coast. Well, we already had some water routes that would go from the East Coast here by ship down the coast into the Gulf of Mexico. Sometimes they stop at Havana, or sometimes they stop at New Orleans. Then they go down to the Isthmus of Panama. Isthmus, I did not say canal. And then offload here and take a train across the isthmus, and then another boat up the coast to, say, San Diego or San Francisco. That was a long trip. So not the best communication, especially if you're waiting for information about what somebody wants you to do in Washington, D.C. over here in the state of California. So the post office was under pressure to figure out how to get mail across from the Mississippi to the West Coast. So the Buchanan administration, that's the administration, presidential administration before Lincoln, they had the Postmaster General, which was part of the Buchanan's cabinet. The Postmaster General appointed by Buchanan, his name was Aaron Brown. And he looked at the map and he says, man, where can we put some mail routes in here? So let's take a look. Oh, well, first we had some expeditions to explore this area between the Rio Grande River and or the Mississippi and the West Coast. Sick Gray's expedition was a mule expedition, and from basically Albuquerque and Zuni Indian Pueblo to San Diego. Whipple Railroad Survey, 1853-54. Well, maybe we can push some railroads through. So Whipple wasn't the only railroad survey along the 35th parallel, but there was one railroad survey for the southern part, there was one for the central, and there was one for the northern part, were all surveyed during 1853-54 to get railroads through. And then Beale Wagon Road Beale was selected, retired Navy lieutenant, was commissioned with building a wagon road from Fort Smith, Arkansas to California. Well, originally from Fort Defiance, but it became from Fort Smith in Arkansas to California. So Beale was also commissioned to test the use of camels out here. And after the survey that Beale did in 1857 and came back, up to California, and then he came back during the winter to see if it was passable, his route was passable in the winter. He wrote his first report and said that, man, these camels are terrific. We should use the camels out here to carry the mail, and we could use camels to freight supplies to our western forts and etc. And the camels can walk twice as fast as a mule and carry 5 times more than a mule, and it can go without water for days and doesn't have to carry its bags of food of corn and grain and stuff on its back. They just carried that for the horses and the mules that were working along with them. So that was under construction then. And let's go see what's next here. Oh yes, here's the preliminary map of the western portion of the reconnaissance and survey for railroad survey near the 35th parallel. The Whipple map, but actually Beale put his route on top of the Whipple map. So let's see a little portion of that, see where that was going. So we're here is Albuquerque is off the map over here to the right. Fort Defiance is up here. And the brighter red track is the Beale route. The green one is the Sick Gray's route, 1857. And the dark red one is the Whipple route. And I want to point out here, Canyon Diablo, Cascado, we know that is Grand Falls on the Little Colorado River right here. And over here we have San Francisco Mountain. And right here we have LaRue Spring, right there. And Mount Kendrick and Mount Sitgraves, named for those two people. Kendrick helped Sitgraves with the military escort. And let's see what the next map shows here. Oh, okay. So in 1857, Congress passed the Overland Mail Bill in March of 1857 during the Buchanan administration. And of course, that landed on the lap of Aaron Brown, Postmaster General. So, other things going on at the same time. Mountain Meadows Massacre. Probably heard of that. That was in September of 57. The Ives Expedition. The U.S. Army was coming out to install secular government in Salt Lake. And Ives explored feasibility of carrying supplies up the Colorado River in case they needed a good way to get supplies to the U.S. Army. That was finally settled peacefully, and a secular government was installed without a battle, although there were guerrilla warfare and skirmishes and so forth. 1858, first immigrant. Oh, okay. So let's go on. Overland Mail, 1849 to 59. So my question is, why does this stop at 1859? What happened in 69, I'm sorry. Of course, that was the Transcontinental Railroad, went through the Central Route. And now we had a railroad to carry mail all the way to the West Coast. But before that, we're talking about land routes. This is a fascinating book. It's not very well known, but it's got a lot of really interesting information in it. Here's a United States troop guarding the Overland Mail. And you can see some kind of cavalry type guys on horseback, and the mail wagon, also stagecoach, because they usually did both, carried mail as well as passengers. Okay, so here's the map. We're talking about Kansas City, Independence, St. Joseph, and various points where these more central routes went through to the Pacific coast. Here's Fort Smith, Arkansas, right here. And Beale built a wagon road along this route here to Albuquerque. And then he continued his route on the 35th parallel all the way to California. Beale had a ranch up here in Southern California. And let's take a closer look at the map. Let's see, where do we want to go next here? No, let's go back to the map. Okay. So in red is the, right here is the Santa Fe Trail. That's pretty much the route that the Aaron Brown wanted to establish a new route from Kansas City all the way to Stockton, California. See, we go from the this route here to Santa Fe to Albuquerque, hit the Beale Wagon Road, and then up the Central Valley to Stockton, and then of course it could go to San. But that was that mail route. Okay, that's the one that we're going to focus on. So, first immigrant party on the Beale Wagon Road. Now, Beale surveyed this wagon road in 1857, in the latter part of 1857. He went to his ranch in California, and then he came back with camels and to see if he could travel this route in the wintertime in 1858. Started out from his ranch in Southern California in the winter, January and February, and went all the way back to Albuquerque. And The next year, Congress gave him more money, and so he started out, went to Fort Smith, Arkansas, and started building the wagon road. And in the fall of I think that was in the fall of 1858, yes. And he wintered in 1858, 59 in Albuquerque with his wagon road party and his camels. And then in the spring of 1859, he started building the wagon road from Albuquerque to California. And prior to that, when he got back to Albuquerque the first time in 1858, checking the route out in the wintertime, he found out that there was an immigrant party that tried to follow his route to California along the 35th parallel on the route that he had surveyed. Of course, he had, a lot of people went through. He had wagons, camels, mules, horses, sheep on the hoof, etc. So he created quite a path, and where there were trees, he would blaze trees as well. And then, noted places, water holes and springs and all that. So this immigrant party I think they started some of them started in Independence, Missouri. It was called the Rose Bailey Party, because they were the ones that organized this group. It was probably close to 100 in this party. And people were talking about, oh, there's a new route to California, and it's shorter and it's faster and it's easier and it's not in the heat of the desert, et cetera, et cetera. So they took off and started following Beale's route to California. Well, what they didn't know is that the Mojave Indians were on the warpath. Actually, all the Indians in that particular area. And so they got to the Colorado River. They were part of the party was making some rafts so they could get across the river with their equipment and so forth, their wagons. And a army of Indians came across the Colorado River and attacked the party that were working on making the rafts for crossing the river. In the meantime, the others they told to stay back up in the foothills there, away from the river, and they'd let them know when to come down to cross over. Well, the Indians got there, engaged them in battle. And the short story of what happened there is 20 casualties on the immigrant party. That's about at least 20% of of the party were either killed or wounded. About half of them were killed, the other another 10 or so were wounded. And they took some of their livestock and supplies, etc. And what could they do? The only thing they could do is to go back to where they started from. There's no cities, no towns, no people except Indians, all the way back to, Fort Defiance perhaps, but Albuquerque. So they went back, and there were two elderly couples who had trying to make this trip to California. And one of them was the John Udell and his wife. And they made it back to Albuquerque, and Beale met them in that winter of 1858-59 and told them that he would take them to California because he was going that way and building the wagon road. Let's see. So here's John Udell kept a fascinating journal during his trips across the plains. Now, prior to this, he'd already been to California at least twice, probably on the southern route. And so this included the massacre of a portion of his party by the Mojave Indians in 1850, whatever it says there. So here's a picture of, oh, John Udell put his name and date on at El Morro National Monument, just east of Zuni Pueblo, July 8th, 1858. First immigrant. Well, it was him and his wife and that whole party of almost 100 people. He was 63 years old. He put his age up here too. Kind of interesting. And that's at Inscription Rock and what today is El Morro National Monument. There's a picture of him. I don't know if that's a self-portrait or not. Now, at the same time, we have the Butterfield Overland Mail begins on the southern route in September of 1858. Again, this is another mail route that was set up. They were building mail stations and so forth along the southern route. And in 1858, the Postmaster General authorizes the mail service from Kansas City to Stockton, California, via Santa Fe, New Mexico. Actually, New Mexico Territory. So that's the route that we're focusing in on. So just a little closer view of that. Again, Kansas City, Independence, this route down to Santa Fe, down to Albuquerque. Here's Zuni Pueblo. And let me see what the next slide is. No, let's back up. Well, this says Colin's Well. Now that's not correct. That should be Hurlin's Well with in the spelling here, it was spelled with a C, but it's K. Curlin's Well. That was a water hole that was used starting in 1859 on the Beale Wagon Road. And then beyond that, over here is the Colorado River and in California. Okay. All right. Now, all these immigrant parties on the, eventually on the Beale Wagon Road, one of the most pleasant places they had to rest and have their livestock graze and get fresh water and wood for fires and cooking was LaRue Spring, which actually was discovered in the sick graze expedition in 1851 and named for Anton LaRue, who was the guide for sick graze and the guide for the railroad survey, the Whipple expedition. Now this is looking at the little canyon that goes up against the San Francisco peaks. Notice that it's filled with boulders and all kinds of debris that's been washed down over the many years. And today there's no water running there, practically none. Well, if you go up to the head wall, there's a little water dripping up there. But if you hike up this little canyon, you run into, well, here's another picture of it. Some of these channels through here, more than one channel near the lower end of the canyon here, some of these channels are 5 foot deep, filled with these huge boulders. But what's also striking is, here's a water pipe. Take another look at broken end of it here. That's probably about a 3-inch iron water pipe that's scattered all the way up toward the head wall where the spring used to be. Here's plastic pipe all over the place. Also going up to the spring at the head of this little canyon. Here's again, that's maybe 2.5 inch across. That's a ponderosa pine cone there for size. Now, where the water is today and what they refer to as LaRue Spring today is not the original one that I just showed you, but this one here, where water started coming out of the side of the hill here. Notice there's no boulders, it's just a smooth little canyon. No deep gouges in it, 5 feet deep. And this is a spring box. And this is what is referred to as LaRue Spring today. There is the spring box, and they capture the water here, and then it's piped all the way down. Whoop, sprung a lake. This little fountain here coming off of the plastic pipe there is about 20 feet high. That's about where the head of the water pressure is. This runs all the way down into this beautiful valley to the hotshot camp, fire people. And when you look to the left here, this is this beautiful valley filled with grass, wood, cool water coming out of original LaRue Spring. Over here is the hotshot camp, just for scale. It's a little, there's the dwelling there and vehicles parked over here. That's the fire hotshot camp. That's, by the way, Wing Mountain over there. This is looking toward the south. So LaRue Spring is behind me from this picture. So, where are we here? Oh, here we are. Here's Colin's Well. It should be Kerlin, Kerlin. They didn't get it spelled right. And here's the Fort Mojave. The U.S. Army had to come up here and establish a fort so that people going on the Beale Wagon Road here, especially after the Civil War, all this was completed just the route before the Civil War. And here's Yuma. There was a fort down here. Here's San Diego. And here the mail is supposed to be going up here to Stockton. So something unfortunate happened in March of 1859 after Brown got all these new routes, not just this one, but many other overland routes going. He died in office and was replaced by Joseph Holt. Now, Joseph Holt was a pretty astute businessman, and he started looking at the expenses and the income to create all these mail routes. And he came to the conclusion that in 1859 dollars, they had lost almost $2 million in establishing these new mail routes. That's after you subtract the amount of income they had coming in, charging for the mail, U.S. mail. So what happens? Let's see. Let's go back. Aaron Brown. Okay. So what happens is that Holt cancels Kansas City to Stockton mail route. He canceled some other ones as well. He says, we just can't afford this. We're U.S. mail is going bankrupt. So a lot of those routes got canceled, including the Kansas City one. Now, I want to read to you. Let's go to the next slide. About in April of 1859, Beale and his camels actually facilitated. Now this is after Aaron Brown died, but the route hadn't been canceled yet. They were still trying to establish mail stations and see if they could get the mail through. By the way, this is about 6-7 months after this route was authorized. And they were supposed to be taking the mail once a month, all the way to Stockton, and once a month all the way back. But at the same time, they would leave Kansas City and Stockton about the same time, kind of meet in the middle, and then continue their their mail route to their destination. So at this time, the route hadn't been canceled yet, or might have been, but the news hadn't gotten out to the people working on the mail route. So actually, this mail only got through, let me see here, there were 2 runs made, got through to Stockton. Yeah, 2 routes made it through to Stockton, and maybe 4 were made back to east, back to Kansas City. There should have been 8, well, no, 12 during this going each way during this 6-month period. So they weren't very successful getting it through either. And there were problems. So I want to read to you from the Beals Journal from April 18, 1859, from Beals' 1860 report. One of his assistants on the Beal Wagon Road was a bishop. As a bishop approached the river, 4 men of the mail party, which had been making fruitless attempts for nearly a year, well, they couldn't have been because the mail wasn't authorized that long, to get the mail over the road, joined him, but on seeing the number of Indians, their hearts failed them, and 2 turned back, the 2. The mail was brought on my camels and delivered to the agent Smith, who was traveling with my party, and having no means of sending back the mail, he brought it as the camels, after meeting me, turned back to the Colorado, going the other way. It was transferred back to one of them and now returns with us. Thus, the first mail of the 35th parallel was brought on my camels both ways. Well, not all the way to Stockton and not all the way to Kansas City, but at least over part of the journey, his camels facilitated the mail east and west on this Kansas City to Stockton, California route. Let's see. Okay, so I have a question here. Are there any mail stations from this route that are still in existence? Not operating, obviously. Any remains, I should have said, of mail stations from this route still in existence? Okay. To give you a little background here, I want to read from the Journal of John Udell. 1858, July 57. This is on the way to the Colorado River. They hadn't encountered the Indians yet. We came 7 miles to LaRue Springs at the foot of the San Francisco Mountains, which is the highest on the route and is perpetually covered with snow. Not anymore. This mountain can be seen at a distance of 75 miles. The main spring is about 3/4 of a mile to the right of the main road. At the head of a small ravine, it comes rushing down out through huge boulders and is sufficient to supply an indefinite number of livestock. This is a beautiful level road, and the valley thickly set in good grass, stretching off to the south. This is the valley of the richest soil I've seen in New Mexico territory. Thickly set in tall, rich grass, excellent for livestock. The valley has an area of several thousand acres, is open and smooth, surrounded with a forest of beautiful pine, and all it lacks of making it a delightful and I think healthy and place as can be found is a settlement of good, civilized, intelligent Christians and a railroad going through it. Nature has well adapted it for all these purposes, and there's abundance of wild game such as deer, antelope, bear, turkeys, etc. Travel today, 7 miles, and we are 1,216 miles from the Missouri River. Interesting. Okay, so the next one I'm going to read is after they had to retreat from the Colorado River all the way back to Albuquerque, lost 20 or 10 killed, 10 wounded at the Colorado River. And they found in the winter of 58, 59, Beale said he would take them to California as he was building the road. So I'm going to read another place here from 1859 now, a year later, July 17. This is another member of the Beale Wagon Road Party, Frederick Engel. I believe he was part of the military, but he was working with Beale on the road. And he says, at last we struck a dental shope, which we know must descend to the valley of LaRue Spring. Our surmise was correct, for we soon met our wagon trail and followed it to our camp and found the party preparing for an early start the following morning. LaRue Spring, which rises from San Francisco Mountain, flows into a valley on its western side. The stream, let's see. Its stream conducted by a trench down to one of the mail stations, plural, of the mail company. In the trench, which is about 50 yards in length, several deep holes have been dug and walled around. The water of the spring is clear as crystal, pure and cold. Throughout the year, it yields unfulling supply. The weather during the day was cloudy with occasional showers. Okay, that was July 1859. Now I want to read what Udell wrote in his journal at the same time. 1859, April 15. He didn't say much because he'd already expanded on it in 2 paragraphs in the previous year. April 15, frost again at night, day pleasant, fresh antelope meat today. We traveled 7 miles and camped at LaRue Springs. Mail station here. That's 2 journals that say there was a mail station at LaRue Spring, which of course is just north and a little west of where Flagstaff is today. Now, Aaron Brown had died before this. They were trying, probably at this time, they were in April, they were trying to install Joseph Holt, who was going to take Brown's place. And so there was a mail station there. It's not in existence. We don't know exactly where it was. We know approximately. This is a possible mail station 6 miles east of Winslow on the Little Colorado River. And this photo was taken by Joe Rodriguez in 1970. That's 50 years ago. This is what it looked like 50 years ago. And this would have been right on the Beale Wagon Road. So there, we can't find that, or nobody's found that today. Probably all that wood has been salvaged, and maybe even the stone for building something else. Next. Okay, now this is, you're looking south into Cataract Canyon. This is north of Williams, the town of Williams. And you see what looks like a pile of rocks here. That's probably another one of the mail stations that was never finished. And this, we're looking, no, south. No, we're not. We're looking, that's wrong. From Low Draw on the Beale Wagon Road. That's part of the Beale Wagon Road where Cataract Canyon is washed out. And there's the wagon road went through there. Okay, next. This is probably the tracks from the Beale Wagon Road. This is the current ranch road over here today. Jerry Earhart, Joe Meehan, and my friend John Yazzie. John Yazzie, I acquainted with him when I was working for the Forest Service in Rocky Mountain Research Station, and he was a good surveyor as well. Close up of one side of mail station, limestone structure. This is on the back side of it, looking down into the, where a road goes through here. This structure here is quite interesting. Let's see. This is looking at it from the inside. Looks like a chimney with maybe a fire in here, but there's no evidence of a fire. Even this log holding up these rocks, it hasn't been burned, because this was actually not constructed for a fire. It was structured for a place to protect yourself and be able to fire 360 degrees around. It's sometimes referred to as a chimney, but it's not constructed like a chimney. So this is a site card that I made for this site. It's Northern Arizona 29230. I was out there with Nancy and Joe Jordan the first time. We had a hard time finding this place, first of all. This is a sketch. Joe called this a barbette, that you can go in and shoot 360 degrees around you. There's a doorway over here. The dimensions of this structure, the foundations at least. Some of it's just made with local rock. Well, it's all local limestone, Kaibab limestone. Now, Jack Beal Smith excavated this site in the 1980s. And this is his map. It's not quite the scale, but he said this was a foundation over here, a possible horse shelter. I'm going to turn this so you can read it better. But let's see, let's turn it. Yeah, here we go. So this is that doorway again. Possible horse shelter, possible tack room over here. He found a campfire site here, a campfire site here, another campfire site over here. The opening to he called it a bastion rather than a barbette. There's a boulder here, and here's the things that he found on the floor of this site. 10 various sizes of square nails, 4 wire round nails, 1 brass suspender, etc. 5 45 caliber cartridges, date from the early 70s, 19th century horseshoe nail, buttons, soldered lid to a spice or salt and pepper can, 19th century, 3 barrel straps, 1 soldered can from late 70s, 1 soldered sardine can. 1 spot on the floor, there were 23 square nails of various sizes, 1 small file, and 5 staples for fencing. And I pointed out the 3 campfire sites on the floor. Now, he told me that he found a 18, what was it? 47, no, 50, no, 37 maybe, $50 or something. And I said, wow, can you send me a picture of it? By the way, he kept all this stuff, I guess. But he never did. Never did send me a picture of the $50 he said he found there. Okay, so Postmaster Holt cancels the Stockton to mail route in May. That was after April, of course, when they were going through here. And so with Joe Meehan and John Yazzie and Jerry Earhart, we were looking to see if there were any Indian artifacts around. Well, we found these 3 monos, a single hand mono, double hand mono, and this mono broken in half. That's all we found, no pottery, but just European things in that place. The cowboys around there probably used that site to get out of the wind and for camping there. There's a cattle tank over there that's called Chimney Tank, probably named for this site. Okay. There's some of the cattle grazing in low draw. So just have some fried eggs for breakfast. This is Cowboys call these prickly poppies fried eggs. And of course, some beautiful prickly pear cactus blossoms. Some fruits forming over here, but not ready yet to pick. So we're pretty much at the end of my presentation here. So I just want to thank Jack Beal Smith, Joe and Nancy Jordan, Jerry Grandy, she helped with the PowerPoint, John Yazzie, Joe Meehan, and Jerry Earhart, and to all the historical characters mentioned who made this presentation possible. Thank you.
Well done, Jerry. Thank you. There's a small group of folks here.
I think I did it in 1 hour. Is that right?
That's awesome. Yeah, you did great. Why don't you stop your share here?
Okay.
And I'm gonna just encourage everyone to unmute yourself and turn on your videos if you'd like. And if you have questions, I'll turn on my video. Okay.
There, I can see you.
Yeah. There's Alberto. And anybody else who wants to join us. Jonathan Upchurch asked a question in chat, which is, where is the Routh Spring located exactly?
Yes.
What do you got for that?
Yeah, well, it's on topographic maps. And if you want to get there, you take Highway 180 going toward the Grand Canyon. And when you get to the turnoff for the Snow Bowl, to which you make a right turn, that road runs straight for about a mile. And then it turns right, that paved road turns right and starts working its way up to Snow Bowl.
Right?
Right at that place where that turn is,
Yes.
after the straight, you just pull ahead and you park.
There's
Right
a little
next to the
turnoff
gate.
right there.
There's a road a dirt road that continues there.
That's right.
And you just park there, and there's a place you can climb over the fence. Well, you can go through the gate too. It's not very, doesn't keep, well, it probably keeps cattle out, but not much else. So you walk straight and just keep going until the trail finally branches. You can take a right or a left, and you go left, and you come to a mouth of a canyon that's full of boulders. That's the original Routh Spring.
Okay.
And if you want to hike, it's a pretty good hike because there's sort of a trail on the right side. And you kind of stay up above the boulders and the ditches or the wash places at the bottom. And again, you'll see iron pipe and plastic pipe. Get a little further up, I don't know if it's still there. Somebody might have taken it. There was even stainless steel pipe. One time I took Wayne Rainey in there, and he was telling me how the geology was there and how what might have happened to stop the spring from running here and it came out somewhere else, and where it was probably coming from up on the mountain. And man, that was really interesting.
Cool.
And I got a picture of him standing at the head wall. There was water dropping and running down the head wall. And he's got his mouth open and he's catching the drips.
Cool.
If I could find that, I'd put it in this presentation. Yeah. So that's where it is.
So
easily accessible. And then if you continue walking where you were walking to the left after the fork going right and left, if you continue walking, then you'll come to that other place that's nice and graphed, practically no boulders. And then you'll see there's a fence there too and a little gate. The fence is usually open, and you'll see that that spring box on the side of the hill where the water's coming out now and captured and taken down to the hot shot camp.
So Jerry, these springs in this area are few and far between. And I noticed that one of the maps showed the route, and I forget which group was going this way,
Mhm.
but they went to Grand Falls, today what we call Grand Falls, on the Little
That
Colorado
was the Sick
River.
Rays expedition,
Okay,
1851.
there, if there was water in the Little Colorado River, they would have not wanted to leave it behind, but they did. And then they
Yeah,
would
they
have,
had to if they were going to get
right,
somewhere to civilization in California.
right. They had to leave the LCR behind, and then they had to make a run for Flagstaff for LaRue Spring. That's a long way with no water. Do you have any idea what the furthest distance was they had to go without water, which means they had to carry their own to water their
Yeah, well,
stock, water
here's what they
themselves.
did, the Sick Rays expedition. They finally agreed that they had to keep moving west.
Okay,
And they said there's got to be some springs around this mountain somewhere.
right.
So they went to the north. They went from Grand Falls area. They went to the north side of the mountain. And they hadn't found any water. And they decided, okay, we're going to break up into smaller groups. We're going to spread out and we're going to follow the mountain around to the west side.
Hmm.
And whoever finds water, fire your gun and we'll hear it and we'll come to where you are.
Sure.
And that's on the west side, kind of a little bit north. On the west side, that's where they found LaRue Spring.
Okay. Okay. And then going further west from there, where's the next watering hole?
Yeah, I think that is what's been called, initially it was called Breckenridge Spring. Beale liked to name places for members of his party.
Okay.
And Gilmer Breckenridge, he was a member of the party. And the next one, there's a cattle tank there now. And it's behind, if you know where Government Mountain is, where all the obsidian is,
Mm-hmm.
this is behind Government Mountain.
This is near Williams.
Yeah,
Okay.
kind of north and Williams. Well, no, not that far yet. But that was, there's some little bit of water trickling around there. And
Okay.
there may have been a rock there that Breckenridge put an inscription on, but it's not there today. It's probably buried in the excavation for the cattle tank.
Okay. And then,
And then the next spring, I don't remember exactly where it was, but there are springs along the way, not many, but enough to
Right.
make it possible.
right.
Yeah, to follow that route.
I also found it fascinating. You mentioned the 1846 map of the United States.
Yeah,
It showed the Colorado River starting roughly where it does today and
Yes.
ending roughly where it does today.
exactly.
That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah,
1846, this was 14 years before, 56, 66, 24 years before the Powell expedition. And here's this
exactly.
map showing the river pretty much
Yeah.
where it goes. That's
Yeah.
pretty fascinating.
Yeah. I have also a 1830s map that also has the Colorado River on
Wow.
it. Yep. And unfortunately, Powell wanted to be the first one to, say it was there, put it on the map, etc. But Ives put it on the map. I mean, Ives made the first map that shows there's a Grand Canyon there
Sure.
and a geological cross section and the first European illustrations. And that was in 1858.
And Ives had latitudes and longitudes. I mean, he was
Yes.
doing a good job controlling his understanding of where he was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He made a very, very good map.
Hmm.
Yeah. One of the best maps before the Civil War, because his map maker used a technique that we see today on maps, which is colored shaded instead of hatching or contours. They're actually, it looks three-dimensional when you look
Okay.
at it
Wow.
because of the shading and
And then
changing color of the
you
mountains and so forth.
you mentioned, and I think Alberto um, mentioned as well about Western Union, about the telegraph and the um, the invention of the telegraph. Now this was before, so the telegraph reached Sacramento
In 1861,
before the train,
yes,
and those telegraph wires would have been strung on wooden poles, and they would have been out in the middle of friggin' nowhere.
right.
So it would have been pretty easy for anybody to take that down, I suppose, if they wanted to.
Yeah, the Indians got the hang of it and they figured out yeah, there were problems with it. Yeah,
Okay. And then, of course, eventually when the train went through, it stayed along the side of the train, so it was easier to repair.
yeah,
Fascinating how technology keeps advancing and just decimates earlier technology
yeah,
as it moves along.
yeah.
Hmm.
Amazing.
Lovely. Any other questions for Jerry tonight?
Oh, I just wanted to say one thing. Jack Beal Smith, he has a bunch of booklets all about the Beal Wagon Road, and he has one that talks about this mail route too. And he has a map that he shows at Curlin's Well. And at Curlin's Well, he has a dot on the map that says possible Bale Station. Now, he never says if he found anything there,
Huh.
or if he found another reference in somebody's journal that there was a mail station there. I wouldn't be surprised that there was,
Hmm.
but that's another one. I've been to Curlin's Well probably, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 5 times, and
Where
I've
is
never
it?
seen it.
Where's Curlin's Well?
It's north of Seligman. It's
Oh.
on a cattle ranch called the Boquillas.
Huh.
And yeah, I used to go there when all you had to do was sign in and put a tag on your rear view mirror. Now they want $25 a person to go
Really?
in there. Yeah. It's in a district for hunting also.
Okay.
So hunters go in there. Yeah.
Huh. Fascinating.
The railroad put a dam on that drainage,
Okay.
and that's all filled up with debris now. That the head of that drainage is a cattle tank.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Huh.
It's an interesting place. There's, besides Curlin's Well, there's a couple of the railroad engineers who put their names on there in 1880, I think, and there's a Mormon inscription there. The guys who built the dams, they put their names on the rock there, and it's a pretty interesting place.
Well, before we wrap up here, I just want you to know, Jerry, that in the chat, Karen Gregg says, thank you. Kathy Ferretta says, thank you, Jerry. Dick Brown says, Jerry, very informative presentation. Thank you. And on behalf certainly of the Grand Canyon Historical Society, I want to thank you for giving this presentation tonight.
You're welcome.
Next month, same time, same place, 6 o'clock on second Tuesday. Kern Nuttall's going to be talking about the Johnson Trail at Lee's Ferry. And until then, you all have a great month, and we will see you again next month.
All right.
Take
Good
care.
night.
Good night, everybody.